Hi, everybody. I'm Laurie LeBay with Alzheimer Speaks, and this is Dementia Chats, which is a fabulous forum to hear people with dementia, what their lives are really like. And I enjoy doing these because I learn every single time we do one of these, and I'm sure you will pick up tidbits as well. Please feel free to share this with family, with friends, with your employees. That's the reason we're doing this. We want you to understand what it's like with dementia. I wish this platform would have been around when I was dealing with my own mother who lived with the disease for 30 years. I think it would have helped both family and friends deal with the situation and live much more gracefully with it and be more inclusive. So to get started, we're just going to have everybody introduce themselves, and then our topic of conversation today is pets. And don't think it's not going to touch you, because it will. You are going to get some major insights if you're pet people or not, because pets have a big impact in our life from an emotional stance, from a physical stance, if they're in our house or if they're just visiting or if we're visiting them. So you're going to want to hear what our folks have to say about this. And again, each of them is living with dementia. Susan, do you want to give people a little background on yourself, please?
Yes, I'm Susan Suchan. I live in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I'm 5'8" years old, with a diagnosis of early onset Alzheimer about a dozen years ago, I think, and 3-4 years ago, FTD and PPA.
Okay, great. Craig, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Craig Hanke. I'm from Tomahawk, Wisconsin. Was diagnosed at age 55, which is 2 years ago, with Lewy body dementia and early onset Parkinson's.
Great, thank you. True, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hello, my legal name is Truthful, Loving Kindness, and I have, my current diagnosis is MCI, mild cognitive impairment. I have mild to moderate cerebrovascular disease and considerable Lewy body symptoms. And I blog. I am admin for Dementia Mentors and advisory council for DAA.
Wonderful, thank you. And Laurie?
My name is Laurie Scherrer. I live in Pennsylvania, and 55, I was diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's and FTD. And I am active in a number of things and mentor people on chats, but it's just such a pleasure to be here and always to be with other people with dementia and talk about our challenges.
Great, thank you, Laurie. Michael?
My name is Michael Ellenbogen. I'm either 57 or 58, can't remember. I was born in 1958, so that's what you guys will figure out. And I now spend my time advocating for the cause. I was diagnosed with Alzheimer's at age 49 after struggling for 10 years to get a diagnosis.
Great, thank you. Paulan?
My name is Paulan Gordon. I live in Cincinnati. I was diagnosed with vascular dementia, I guess it's been 4 years now, at age 57. I'm involved in a lot of different advocacy activities. I have written a book on dementia, and I'm excited to say that my booklet now has been published in all the English-speaking countries.
Wonderful. That's fantastic. Great news to hear. And the name of it is, it's on vascular dementia. Do you remember the title?
Vascular Dementia and Inside Perspective.
Okay, great. And can they get that on Amazon then?
On Amazon, it's free to Kindle Unlimited members, and it's 99 cents for anybody else to download.
Okay, wonderful. I'm just going to throw this out before we get started on the topic. Michael, you have a book too. And do you want to give your book a plug?
I think it's called From the Corner Office to Alzheimer's. I don't usually try to promote it.
Yep. And that can be purchased on Amazon as well, correct?
Yeah. It's actually available there and in bookstores if you want. It can be ordered. And, to give it a plug, it's actually being used in a couple colleges, which I think is great.
Yep. Now, has anyone else written a book that I'm not aware of? Okay. Put it on your list. It's a bucket list. Everybody here does a lot of writing and stuff, which is interesting too. So, hook up with them on Facebook to find more information, and they're just very active advocates all the way around. So let's get to our topic of pets. And Susan, I'm going to go ahead and start with you. We'll just kind of go round robin on pets. What are your thoughts about pets and a person with dementia? Anything specific stick out to you?
I've always had pets, love pets, dogs particularly. Usually a herd of dogs is what I was associated with, and found them to each have their own personalities. And I was always the the top dog, so to speak. I was the ringmaster of a plethora of dogs. As time has passed, and they have passed, I am now down to a dog. And I think I have seen change that they are my routine. I'm cognizant of the needs of dog, out, eat, clean, the task of having pet. My best friend, I can tell anything to, and no comment. They just like me just way be.
Mm-hmm.
The challenges I've noticed change for me is I have elder dog now. So if that elder dog is not moving, I may not really think about the dog. If he's moving, he wants something. And he cues me with his movements, where that was not always the way. So he and I are aging gracefully together. I find for me, when he is ill or not behaving in a way that I am familiar, the stress level for me is absolutely profound, to the point of take the dog to the vet and have the dog put down. Literally, I have no idea what to do for him, and the fear around that inability is as frightening as the thought that the dog is sick. I was a nurse, so illness and problem solving around symptoms is something always very familiar to me. And it's become completely obscure, and it just turns a very logical situation into illogical. So I've been very surprised at my reactions to what would have in past been a simple solution. There's no feel way now.
Okay, Great, thank you for sharing. Craig, how about you? You're a pet owner.
I have a large dog and a small dog and a cat. I don't know what I'd do without them. Like Susan said, you can talk to them about anything, and they're always there to greet you at the door. My biggest problem with pets, though, is when I'm dog sitting in other dogs. It's just too much commotion. The one dog that we watch barks very loudly compared to my dogs, and it just puts you on edge. And then my son's dog is just a big moose. It thinks it's 20 pounds, but it's about 140. So when it moves around, it just kind of like pushes you over. So you got to be careful with your balance issues with having the pets around. One thing that I miss is hunting with my dog because I can't hunt anymore. So my lab is pretty much lost. She hears the gunshots going off behind us in the marsh. She's looking at me like, "Why aren't we going hunting? What's going on?" But yeah, pets are a good release. Don't know what I do without them.
I think it's real interesting when you brought up about, the large dogs or just an unknown dog kind of underfoot and the balance issues that come with dementia for so many people. That's a really, really good, valid point that I think a lot of us don't even think about, but it's just kind of like a little kid. They're just on the move, and you never know when they're going to be, underfoot or scare you, like you said, with the bigger bark. You're not used to that, and the noise levels and stuff. And Susan, you had kind of referred to that too, about the movement, being able to judge what's going on. There's just so many cues. We're so tied into our pets emotionally, physically, psychologically. And I don't think we all realize the depth of those relationships. And just like with people, we're reading nonverbals, in terms of needs and cues and being triggered from those things too. Craig, I wanted to ask you, you'd mentioned, the dog you can tell is thinking, "Hey, what's going on? The guns are going off and we're in the house." Do you think of that when you hear the gunshots, or is it not until the dog reacts that you think about missing hunting?
Mostly the dog, because she'll come up to me and actually sit in front of me and look at me like we should be out there, and I agree with her. But with the facts of having hallucinations, I don't think it's wise to have a firearm in my hands. Mm-hmm. So I'm just not going to put myself or anybody else at risk that way. But one other thing I wanted to mention too is the dogs are actually a helper when I'm sleeping and into my real horrific dreams. Mm-hmm. The dogs sleep with us, so my lab will get down and she gets off the bed, but our little dog will come up and actually paw at me and try to wake me up. Okay. So it's like they sense that something's going on. So in a way, it's good because he'll wake me up out of this dream that I'm having, because anybody that has Lewy body dementia knows that the dreams you have are quite vivid and quite scary. Mm-hmm. So it's good to have him there to wake me up.
Great. Thank you. True?
Craig, two things. One, that behavior of the dog, you can tailor. That's your smaller dog, not your lab, right? That's responding when you are having the vivid dreams. Okay. You can tailor that to very much help you and give him, her, I'm not sure which, a purpose. But item number 2 is your lab. Labs are very work-oriented dogs. And if that lab feels like her work was when you're hunting, she will begin to feel purposeless and not of use. And her self-esteem and behavior is going to drop unless you find her something else that she can feel like she is her job. She needs to feel that something is her job. And it sounds like right now she still feels like hunting is her job and she can't do it. So we need to think about what can become her job so that she still has a purpose, just like every other being. Some beings really need a purpose more than others, and labs are one that usually very much need a purpose.
Okay.
That's right.
Interesting. True, you want to talk? Why don't you give a little bit of history about yourself and pets and things too, so people will have a little better idea where you're coming from with this.
Okay, quick version. We always had animals. We had coyotes, cows, poodle dogs, cow dogs, etc. And I have self-trained 2 dogs to pull my wheelchair during the 12 years that I was in a wheelchair. I represented service dogs at the county level. As far as our purpose in this, I need to say that service dogs are not considered pets. They are not legally a pet. So vocabulary can be a very big deal in the service dog world. I just got 2 weeks ago partner who was finally asleep, and he has his little in training tab. We began training 2 weeks ago. He knows, he's 2.5 months old. He now knows his name, potty, sit. He's working on stay. Just started it the other day. Release. Pretty good for 2 weeks of work.
That's wonderful. That's a lot of progress. I need you to come and work with ours at home and get him a little bit more on schedule. I want to ask you, True, you know, with because there was a while when you didn't have your dog, you went through a loss of a dog. Let's talk a little bit about that too and the effects of that.
I did better with Blessing. Losing Blessing was the last dog I lost. She was another service dog. Lost her at 14 years old, which for a newfie is very, very old. But when I lost my first service dog, Hero, I was not prepared for the difference between losing a dog that is a pet and losing a dog that is a part of everything you do. Like when we were attacked a number of times actually by dogs, and when the first time that I was attacked, Guy stepped in between the dog and us, and he ended up having to take the rabies series. But afterwards, I went into shock, just like if I had been, well, I was attacked. But the grief process for a dog that is so intimately it attached in every way, like, I mean, he alerted for sleep apnea, he pulled my wheelchair, and when a dog is that attached, losing them is completely different than losing a pet that you leave home when you're gone to work and you leave home when you're gone shopping. When you're with that animal 24/7 and then you lose it, it's much more losing a part of you than losing a pet. And I wasn't prepared for that difference. It's really, really hard. It's very, very different.
Okay, I can see that. Does anybody else want to chime in terms of, has anyone else lost a pet and what that was like for them, either, you know, before dementia hit or after, you know, once you're living with it? Laurie?
I had a Bichon who we had gotten from a puppy, and he was only this big when we got him. He was extremely intelligent. Within 2 weeks, he was trained to go and ring the bell at the door when he had to go out, and was just really very smart. Knew how to unzipper purses to get people's mints and gum out of the purses. People would come to the house, and I said, "Give me your purse." He'd undo zippers or whatever. But we lost him. It was April. And that was very hard because I've lost other pets and it was really hard. They were really special to me. But then I'd go to work. Whereas Luz and Dominic, I was at home every day. So even though I have 2 others, Dominic should have been on the couch. And Dominic would tell me when they had to go out. These 2 don't tell me when they have to go out like Dominic did. Dominic would tell me they had to go out. So that's a new challenge. But I think because basically I'm with them 24/7. And like Susan said, man, you tell them everything. I tell them everything. When they start to talk back, that's going to be a concern. But for now, they don't talk back yet. It's different when you're with them constantly. And especially if you're not out with other people, they become your socialization to a point. They calm you. These 2 are both in training to walk with my walker, which they're very good at. When we go for a walk, we tell them go home, and they will turn around and bring me back to the house. So we're training them both to do a couple other things as well as being pets. But yeah, it's more difficult when you can't get away. You can't escape to work or escape to somewhere else in order to deal with it. It's like you're living with, there's a loss right here. It doesn't go away.
Okay. True, you had just made a note that one of your coping skills was to put together a memorial site. And you've got in the chat box, tributeperfectmemorials.com /hero service dog. And that's where you did yours for your dog. Michael, you had a comment?
Yeah, Laurie, I'll tell you, we had a dog that we had to put down after 15 and a half years because of health reasons. And the one thing that stands out in my mind that I'm almost kind of embarrassed to even share is that when we lost this dog, I had such sad feelings. I mean, I was literally crying over a dog where I have lost family members, and I didn't feel as bad about the family members that I felt about the dog. So it's really something how you can get attached to an animal so close, and how much they mean to you in life. I could just imagine what Truthful Kindness had to go through when you're relying on that dog to do what they do 24/7. I could just imagine how much more pain there must be over something like that.
Yeah, I just to raise a hand, who has cried when they've lost a pet? I mean, you know, and for more than just a day, you know, and it because I think those relationships are so intrinsic in us, and little things can trigger. I mean, I lost Mr. Mario a couple years ago, and I still feel the loss for him at times. I lost David, gosh, probably 15 years ago, and sometimes I swear I feel him on my bed by my feet, you know. And Miss Prada, you know, we lost her a couple of years ago too, and it's just you know, they become such a part of your routine and your being and your personality and even who you are. You know, it's almost like being a couple, you know. You're more than just you with your pet for most people. Paulan, you had a question or comment?
Yeah, I lost a dog about 5 years ago, and he and I were extremely close. He was a great big dog, and I think the great big dogs, they're almost like people. There's, you know, you can lay down with them, and they're big and everything like that. But I was very, very close to the dog. The dog must have had a heart attack in his sleep, because I went down one morning and he was all curled up in his bed and he was dead. So it was kind of a shock, because he hadn't been sick or anything. It was just an all of a sudden thing. So it was really, really hard to let him go. But after I let him go, I thought a lot about whether to get another dog again. You know, that was a big question I had. Do I want to get another dog again? And my dog was not a service dog. He was just a fun dog that I played with. And I kept thinking, okay, now I'm going to be 60, and if I get another dog, that might be up to my 80, you know, if I'm fortunate to live that long. And if I'm not fortunate to live that long, I'll be leaving this dog behind. The other thing that concerned me was my ability to take care of the dog as things progressed. You know, I forget whether I've eaten or not. I don't know if I fed the dog or not. I mean, I have to have a elaborate system set up to make sure that I was able to take care of the dog properly. So I'm dogless for now. I really miss having a dog, but I just am not sure that I'm capable of taking care of one at this point.
Susan, did you have a comment you wanted to add about the passing of a pet?
Yeah, we sometimes, as Michael referred to, sometimes feel like maybe we mourned our animals too much and seem a little over the top. I've mourned each and every one of mine. I have a shrine of my pets, literally. Some would laugh. My recent loss of pet was summer. I believe this summer it was 1 month old, and he had a heart attack in my arms on the way to the vet, and he passed. And I was really thankful that I had not have to make the choice of it's time and have to make that choice. He died naturally, and it was quickly, and I was present. What I have found is, and family members are very surprised that once the dog passed, and I mourned him very briefly, which is not typical me. And if I don't see a picture of him now, or he isn't referenced to me in some way, I don't really even remember that dog at all. What I will remember most often, or bring up emotion of the loss, is dogs from years ago that and I can miss them as though it was yesterday. And it's such a curious process for myself, and particularly those around me, because they have an expectation of mourning from me they've always seen before that is different. I just don't remember. And I feel guilty because I have adored each and every animal that I've had the joy to spend my time with. So this is so completely different. They know not how to process any more than me. But those cues we talk about from pets, I also get people around me saying. So I sense this thing of, did she no love the dog? Does she no remember the dog? Does she not care? Is she blank? It's an interesting dilemma when you don't remember that your dog died. It's really odd.
You know, it kind of reminds me of when my dad passed, and my mom was at the funeral, and everyone's like, oh, she's dealing with this so well. And she's just amazing. My mom was taking care of everyone else at the funeral. And I had to keep telling people, she doesn't realize that's her husband in the casket. This is her role of taking care. And people were just shocked. And it's like, it's the disease, and it's not that she didn't love him. I mean, my God, they were together almost 50 years. And so part of it was, because I see what you're talking about, is people look kind of skewed, like, well, what's wrong? Wasn't that a good relationship?
Yeah.
And it's almost, and they don't mean to do it, but it's almost like a blaming thing and a guilt thing, where it really should be almost a gift that you don't have to experience that kind of loss.
Yeah.
But people don't frame it like that because they're so used to seeing you play this role and not really understanding the disease. And I mean, we all know the pain of loss, if it's a pet or if it's a human being, or if it's loss of job or driving, loss is loss, and it's painful and it's not comfortable. And if there's a way, with this disease, to remove some of that, to frame it as a gift, and not an oddity, would be really nice for people to understand and appreciate, instead of keep bringing it up. Like,
right.
You really should be bothered by this.
You hear often in background, well, she just processed that so well. We were so worried she'd just fall apart. And look how well she's done. Yeah. Meanwhile, I'm like, I don't get it. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, it's not that I processed, it's that I missed the process.
Right. And it's not until later, even for self, that might put those pieces together.
Sure.
It's an evolution. You're going, oh, well, okay, that then makes sense, and you can share that learned experience with those who are still questioning why you are behaving in a certain way around this huge loss. I was ashamed for a period of time that I wasn't responding like I was expected to. And it took time to process, put the pieces together to say, well, for whatever reason, that just, some would call that apathy, some would call that the loss of the memory of that pet. I don't know, it could be combination, but nonetheless, this is how it transpired to the outside world, and I can't change that. I cannot fix that.
I wonder if that goes in at all with, like, me in not recognizing my husband at all. It's not that I don't love him.
Right.
It's just that there's a man there, and there's a man there, and there's a man there. And I have no idea which one is my husband because that part's gone. That's part of the Swiss cheese hole.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It could be. I don't know.
Maybe partly because it's so important to me. My husband has mentioned before, if something is really important, I am more likely to lose it. It's the opposite of what people expect. Instead of the more important it is, the more likely I'm to retain it. It is the more important it is, the more likely I am to lose it.
Okay. Laurie, you had a comment? And then I want you to add your comment and then talk just about your pet experience too, if you don't mind.
My comment is, I've had people say, well, are you going to replace Dominic? Or are you going to get another dog? And my feeling is I have to. I got 3 by default, but I'm happy with 2. And replacing him will be hard because it's difficult to break in a new one and do all the training that's required. I find that I have alarms on my iPad that tell me to feed the dogs. It goes off at 5:45 and it says on it, feed the dogs. The dogs know their alarm. When they hear their alarm, no matter what I'm doing, it's, yo, it's time to eat, you know. And they know that one. I'm wishing this one would learn how to give herself a bath because I could bathe her every 2 days and she's still a dirt ball. But I haven't learned that one yet. But would I replace him? It's there's been a number of times where I think I fed the dogs. I turned off the alarm, and I think I fed them, but they're acting like they're still hungry. Now, it could be because that one's too fat and is hungry, or it could be that I didn't really feed them. So did I or didn't I? Not sure. What do? You feed them again, and she gets more fat. There's times when I don't get to walk them for a week. We have a fenced-in backyard, so they don't have to walk. They need the exercise. I need the exercise. But there's times where mentally I can't do it by myself because I tend to stray into the middle of the road at times. So if I can't get somebody to walk with me, they're not getting their exercise. And I feel bad about that. On the other hand, when I'm having a bad day and I can't think and I can't process, she is right beside me, does not leave me at all, licks me, cuddles with me, and then when I'm having a good day, she goes off by herself and the little one comes over. But there's such companionship and friendship, but it's also, it's difficult. It's adding another responsibility, which in my opinion is worth it. But I sometimes wonder, am I doing everything with them I'm supposed to? Did I remember to feed them? Oh, geez, I should have given them a bath. They really stink. That type of stuff. It's difficult to remember. Did they get their next guard? Let me check the iPad. Did I give it to them? If I gave it to them and I didn't write it down, I could overdose them on next guard. Can't do that. Skip a month. It is something else to remember and to have to work on. Having dementia, that can get tough at times.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally understand that. Michael, how about you? What are your thoughts on pets?
Well, I have to tell you, we had to put our dog down many years ago, and I swore I was never going to get a pet again. And I was very good at keeping that from happening until my wife and daughter kept beating me up for 3 years. So I finally gave in reluctantly, and I love the dog that we had. I really do. But I really believe this was a big mistake in my life to allow that to happen. There's a lot of stress that goes with having a dog. And as it's been mentioned, some of us have a tough time already walking at times. And my God, this little 3-pound dog is always trying to knock me the hell over, or I got to watch out about stepping on him. So it makes it really hard. On the other hand, he's a smart dog, but he has behavioral issues. And they're hard to deal with. They're really hard to deal with and very stressful. Not only to me, my wife is also starting to find out, and I bet if I had to ask her today, would she do it again? I bet you she would say no, but she would never say that to me now. I guarantee you. You know, my fear is that I'm going to do something wrong to this dog because he just makes me fly off the handle. When he barks, I cannot take it. I absolutely cannot take it. I mean, it just makes me fly off the handle. And I am so afraid I'm going to do something to hurt the dog. He's only 3 pounds. You know, I mean, my other dog, I might have kicked him or something or thrown something at him. But this one, he's just so small that anything would really probably hurt the dog. So I really worry about that. Plus also stepping on him. I mean, he's so little. And, you know, I just have this fear that this isn't going to end pretty.
And that's really spooky when, you know, you know right from wrong, but then you're worried about as the disease progresses, you know, are you going to be able to control your emotions and your reactions? And it could be anything from, like you said, the tripping and I mean, they could really cause damage with a fall. I mean, it's not good for any of us to fall. Or with just a knee-jerk reaction from a bark or a nip or any of those things. You know, because as we all know, filters change when you have dementia, and your ability to process or react appropriately. You know, so those are all really good points. Paulan, how about you? You know, do you have a pet currently, or have you had one in the past, and what are your thoughts?
Well, I had one in the past, the one that died 5 years ago. And after that, like I said, I really was concerned that I would not be capable of taking care of this dog throughout its life. And so I reluctantly have, you know, chosen not to have a dog. And it's, you know, it's like a hole in my heart because I always had a dog and I was very attached to the dog. And I was watching my son's dog for about 6 months for him. And then he took the dog back and I was like, huh, what happened to my dog? But I really fell in love with the dog. But I just think I can't take care of myself that well. And I don't know that I should be taking care of a puppy now, and then I don't know if I will outlive the dog or the dog will outlive me. So those are some of the concerns that I have.
Sure, go ahead.
There is no way that I could have a dog except for the fact that I have a backup. I have a substitute caregiver for the dog because, like you, Paulan, I can't remember whether I've eaten. I can't remember whether the dog has eaten. I can't rely on, I mean, yes, dogs give good cues for eating and pottying after they're trained, after their, you know, adult stage. But I also, when I represented service dogs at the county level, there were 2 dogs that died from lack of care by the handler who had cognitive issues. Because if we can't even rely on our care of ourselves, how can we rely on our care of the animal? I don't know whether the chickens are out unless I can see them. I don't know whether the dog is outside in the road. You know, I've got to have that backup. And I am very much at the edge of my ability to train a service dog right now. I suspect in a year or two, I would not have this ability. I am a good trainer, but it takes a lot of cognitive thought processes to do this. And this definitely, having a pet is definitely not always a good idea. Having an animal or a service dog is definitely not always a good idea. And all too many people think this is the answer. This is the ticket that is going to make everything better. And it isn't. There is no ticket. Everything is a factor and has a balance beam of cost and benefit. And somebody else needs to be able to step in and say, what about this? What about that? Otherwise, it becomes a danger.
Yeah, so those are good points, that whole balance issue. Michael, you had a comment?
Yeah, two things. First of all, I'd like to just put it on the table. I learned this from my friend Terry Berry, who's living with Alzheimer's or some sort of form of dementia. But she came up with a great creative idea that I think it should be known. She takes a jar and fills the jar every morning with dog food. And she looks at the jar throughout the day, and she knows that if it's missing a little bit in the morning, she knows she fed the dog, at breakfast. She can look throughout the whole day and see if that jar is empty or full or where it's at. Based on that, she knows whether she fed it. And I think that's a great little way for people to figure out how to take care of their dog, for those who are still doing that. Luckily for me, I don't need to worry about any of that because that's all my wife's handle. But the second issue I guess I want to bring up is I've read too many times exactly what Truth has said. They get the dog thinking it's going to help, and it's the complete opposite. So I think it's important to go with what the person's wishes are who is living with the disease. If they say no, definitely do not get a damn dog. I mean, I've heard where the caregivers get the dog and the person goes crazy over having a dog, and they can't understand why all of a sudden they have all these bad behaviors coming from the person who's living with the disease. Well, that's why. And, if I would have been a little bit worse off at this particular stage of my life, I can tell you the consequences of this dog would not have been good. I would have not been able to control myself. And I think it's important to remember that when these people think they're going to do good, it may not be good.
I think that's an excellent point because, again, it is a change of routine, bottom line. And routines, as we all know with dementia, are absolutely critical. And just because it worked for one person with dementia doesn't mean it's going to work for another. You've got a different person with dementia. You've got a different environment. You've got a caregiver or a care partner who has, different personality traits and is going to handle things differently. So, and the dogs all have different personalities. I mean, you might have had a really great, well-behaved dog, and the next one you pick out, you think is this little fluff ball that's going to be wonderful, and all of a sudden, where you think it's a cat or something, I mean, you don't know. And those things have to be looked at very, very seriously, because it isn't worth the additional stress that it's going to put on all of you. I think the other thing to really honestly evaluate is, who is this dog for? Is this really for the person with dementia, or is this really for the care partner? And if it's for the care partner, that's okay, but then you got to be real about it. And you have to still evaluate the side effects that it could have, and is it worth it if you're trying to live a harmonious life, or is it going to create more stress for both of you because things have changed? What once would have added value and comfort, it just isn't, because things have changed. I'm going to go to Michael and then Laurie.
I could tell you, there is no doubt in my mind, and I'm willing to bet my wife would agree with this at this point in time. This dog has created so much extra stress in our lives that if she had the time to do it again, she would absolutely not do it. And that's what I think's critical to remember. This is a time that we should be simplifying our lives, not creating more stress in them.
Mm-hmm. Good point. Laurie?
I think our little white one was a rescue, and they think she was about a year old when we got her.
Mm-hmm.
Came in the house, cutest little thing, curled up with my husband. She'd been here a half an hour and the yapping started. And she is a yapper. One of the challenges of a dog that's a year old has already established many habits that might not necessarily be good habits. In her case, the yapping was permitted. And they said it was because she was with a herd of dogs. She was with the breeder, and it was a herd of dogs, and that's how they communicated. It took us a year to get her yapping semi under control. But when she gets excited, the doorbell rings, somebody comes to the house. Getting her to stop yapping when somebody comes is just really, it does your head. You can't understand what somebody's saying when they're at the door because the dog's yapping. What we have found, though, is when I know someone's coming over, we put a little, it's like a cat leash on her. And it helps her insecurity if she's on a leash. She doesn't yap as much when she's on a leash. So there's ways to find to get around it. But yeah, the stress level when we first got her, we almost turned around and took her to the pound. We almost did, because I could not handle the yapping. So I understand, Michael, until you learn how to train them, it can be absolutely horrendous. And a dog that's a year old, I don't know, I'm rethinking that. I'm all for rescuing a dog as to getting a puppy. But I think at this point, if I were to do it again, it would be a puppy, because I think they're easier to train when you know what their habits are and can start fresh. At this point in my life, trying to untrain a dog and retrain them was really a challenge.
You're muted.
I keep coughing, so I keep muting myself. I'm sorry. Craig, I'm going to go to you, and then Paulan, and then True.
I have another perspective that I almost forgot. I did forget about. We had a bird, it was a cockatiel, that lived to be 31 years old, which is twice what they're supposed to live. But this bird you could actually have a conversation with. It would talk back to you. So with my lab, labs are very good with using their eyes to communicate with you as what they want, as to what they want. But this cockatiel would actually talk back to you and you could have a conversation with it. So when he died, it was really a loss, because you could tell your troubles to this bird and it would talk back to you and cheer you up. So it was just another viewpoint on a different type of pet.
Oh, great. Thank you. Paulan, did you have something you wanted to add?
I did want to add, I was thinking about this. My dad had Alzheimer's, and he was in, a home, and they had a couple of little dogs and everything. And my stepmother kept thinking, well, I'll go cheer him up with bringing the dogs. And she'd bring the dogs, and my dad would just be like a zombie. I mean, he was like a zombie anyway at this point. He didn't want these dogs crawling all over him. But everybody thinks that, oh, we'll bring in the animals, and that'll cheer everybody up. But it's just not so. Some of the other people enjoyed the animals, the dogs, but my dad didn't really.
And that's a really good thing to be aware of. Again, just because it works for one doesn't mean it's going to work for everyone. And to really, pay attention and realize that somebody with dementia may not be able to verbalize that. It's up to us as care partners to read in and ask specific questions. And if they're not able to talk, look for other signs of comfort. And we all know when our loved ones are comfortable or not, if we would just slow down and pay attention. We know when they're stressed, we know when they're calm, we know when they're joyful, we know when they're sad, and they don't have to speak a word. We just really have to pay attention with that. True, you had a comment?
As far as a dog being used for therapy, after Hero couldn't pull my wheelchair anymore, we used to take him to a facility, and he, like many dogs, had the ability to really zone in on the person or persons whom he could help. The others he couldn't. It isn't a one size fits all at all. Different tools for different people at different times. Because especially like with Lewy body symptoms, we fluctuate so much. There was a time, even though I am very, very animal oriented, I mean, my goose, I'll fall asleep crying, missing my goose or Hero. I mean, but there have been times, especially with my reaction with meds, where I could not be in the same room with the dog. It was dangerous because I could not control my impulses. So even with people who are extremely animal oriented, that does not mean it's a good idea. It can be disastrous.
Okay. Susan, did you have a comment?
Having experienced this really, for me, odd experience of wanting to kick a dog across the room, that is so out of character for myself, frighteningly so. It scares the you-know-what out of me to think I could ever in a million years cause harm. But in that moment, I could. I know I could. I have not, thank goodness. But just recognizing that and knowing this last little fella I have is, the likelihood is, I will outlive him. His time is coming. And the thought of not having a pet is, I've never not had a dog. Never. I've always had a dog. But when I think about the obstacles, the realistic challenges around training and remembering and lifespan and all of these very valid topics around acquiring a new pet, I have find alternatives so that I can still enjoy what dogs have always resembled for me. So what I do is go to the shelters or the adoption days, and I go and I hold them and I love them and I let them lick me all over. And I feel like I'm probably 5, and the happiness that fills my heart, I like being 5 on that day. And I just enjoy it. And when I go home, I forget until someone says, hey, it's adoption day. Let's go play with the little pets. And it satiates this part of me that have always been there. And I don't think will ever go. But damn dementia and its inabilities to process emotions the way once did. I have to work around that to remember and achieve those feelings, make me good. And I say, for those who say stuck in some place that does no feel good, for me that have be good option for me.
That is so helpful, Susan. I mean, for me, I know if I didn't have the backup of Guy, I could not have a dog. And it would be devastating to think of those other options. I hadn't thought of those other options. That is terrific.
Oh, good. It feels great.
You could maybe volunteer to help at a shelter once a week.
Yeah.
Exactly.
They have a thing, park close no far, where they have a booth on weekends. People come walk a park. It's big. And you can go in, leave your drive license or ID, and they put a harness on the dogs they're trying to adopt. You get to walk a dog. It's advertising this dog for adoption, and you just take a walk with the dog. And it's like, that's a win-win for everybody.
Well, that is wonderful. Thank you for sharing. Now, Michael, you had another comment, I think?
No, I didn't have any other comment, but I guess the good thing about all this, I think it's important for all people who are making a decision to get a dog to listen to this, because I think today we have covered a side that most don't normally speak about. We all talk about the good, but there is some bad for the poor dog, and that's what's critical.
Good. Craig, anything you'd like to add before we close up? Nope. Okay. Laurie, how about you?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Paulan?
I think we covered everything pretty well.
Michael just thought of something.
Yeah, I did. I think the takeaway from this is that if you're going to get a dog, and the dog is a service dog and well-trained service dog coming to you rather than you have to training the dog, that could be a very good thing as long as the service dog is trained by somebody professionally and is working with the person. But if you're just getting a dog that you think is going to satisfy and take care of all the issues and that's going to make everything better for the person, I think you need to think twice about that.
Okay. And True's got some comments on that one.
I'm sorry, but that often doesn't work too well unless the person, the handler, is still has enough cognitive together to be able to do training. Otherwise, the dog doesn't retain the training that long. Most of the people that I know of who have had outside trained dogs, they work for a year or two, but then they're no longer service dogs. Oh, they may be, quote, legally until it is, until they have a issue. They're called a service dog, but they can't do their tasks anymore, and they should not be called service dogs. They create problems for the rest of us because like when you're in high school, you learn German. If you're not correctly using it, in a little while, you no longer know how to correctly use it. Mm-hmm. Any service dog handler needs to be able to continue the teaching and do further teaching because things change. Otherwise, it ends up an unhealthy situation or else just a pet. It's often not a good thing.
And that makes a lot of sense because you have, just with like a child, they can be at mom and dad's house and these are the rules, and they can go to grandma and grandpa's house and these are the rules, and now the rules are kind of mushed. And they're overlapping with what's right and wrong in each house or how it's handled and expectations. So I would imagine a pet is the same. They could be really well trained and then all of a sudden kind of get untrained.
And with a dog, that's even much, much accentuated. When you teach a new task, you teach it at one place and under one circumstance, like right after eating, a certain time of day. or with a certain set of clothes on. You change anything to do with that. And the way the animal mind works, you have to retrain the whole task. Mm-hmm. You may not start the first time you train task A under these circumstances, and you get the task going. Okay, then you change the placement, the location, and you start back at A. You start right back at point A again. And then you change the location again, and that time you don't have to start at A, you start at B. Then you change clothes. You change somebody, you put a hat on, etc. You change the time of day. Every single change completely takes everything back. It's part of the huge difference between an animal mind and a human mind. They're both smart in different ways, but that consistency or flexibility of transferring a task is completely different, and that's what is accentuated and lost between an outside trainer and self-training.
I want to thank everybody. This has been a really, I think, enlightening conversation. I think it's going to help a lot of people. So thank you all very much. And again, if you're watching this, please pass this on. That's why we do these. We want these to go as far as wide as possible to be able to help others dealing with this. And check us out at alzheimerspeaks.com and just go to our initiatives and projects page, and you'll be able to get to all the Dementia Chats recordings.